Do I have what it takes to be a UX designer? Do I have the habits of a designer? These are the things that I asked myself once, so I'm going to take you through habits of mine, experiences of mine that I noticed in myself that made me interested in UX design. I'm just going to go over, like I said, some quick fire habits that you might recognize in yourself that could make for a good designer. First thing is being observant. A good UX designer is keenly aware of the world that they're living in, whether it's drawing inspiration from the things around them or paying attention to people and how they move. If you love people watching, maybe this is something for you. That is something that I have always been told, that I've been very observant to people and how they behave and how they move and just kind of how they present themselves. Also about the things around me, not just people. I can't even tell you guys, my notes app's full of notes of things that I notice that are good or bad things about design. And I think that comes from my interior design background, but I was always back then in my past life taking photos of spaces that I thought were really pretty, or patterns on the floor, or this interesting texture. Like, these are the kinds of things that I keep a log of. And if you find yourself kind of keeping a log of good design, interesting apps, things you would do and would not do, I'd count you as somebody that's pretty observant of the world around them. And that is something that would make for a really good designer. Okay, next thing is reading, or also qualify it as continuous learning. I'm somebody that loves to read, you guys know. So that is kind of how I like to continuously learn, but there could be other ways if you're more somebody that's more of an audio person, visual, YouTube videos, anything. It's really about the continuous learning aspect of it. I obviously read for fun, but then I also just read a bunch of random things. It's UX design, it's finance, it is beauty, it is tech industry, it is also data analysts. It's like all over the place. So, and I think that's good because you tend to be a more well-rounded person, but you're curious. And that is also really an innate habit that I think makes a really good designer. So it's kind of threefold: reading, continuous learning, and being curious. They all kind of walk and talk together for me. And I'm not saying you have to go out and read like scientific journals, like, no. Even if you read like one-pagers from Apple or whatever interesting company or product that you like, and you learn how they came up with their solution, maybe how they developed something, the research that went into it, how they designed their dashboards, how they came up with their prototype. These are the kinds of things that if you are continuously learning about these things, you're going to be able to implement them in your own design and make you a better designer. A great site that I always like to recommend to you guys is Mobbin. That shows actual designs that are tested, that are, fully designed, that are tested with users that are out in the world. So, brands that you're probably very familiar with, companies that you're familiar with. I'd recommend that over something like a Behance or a Dribbble. Those are really more for aesthetics because, in my opinion, not that some of them could be tested and gone through the R&D and research and the whole design process, but you just don't know. A lot of that is really good for visualizing and kind of helping you with what it could look like. So I wouldn't take that kind of stuff as gospel. Since we were just talking a little bit about visuals, the next habit would be to think visually. And obviously it kind of seems like a no-brainer, design visuals, but don't underestimate how difficult it could be to take what's in your brain and transcribe it in a way to get other people to understand. It sounds easier than it is sometimes, and I feel like the more you practice it, the easier it'll be. So a good way to practice that is paper prototypes, wireframes. You do not have to be an artist, like I always tell you guys. You do not have to know how to draw to be a UX designer. You just have to know how to draw shapes, pretty much. Paper before pixels is what I've heard before. You want to get things down on paper before you commit to making them pixel perfect. I had a lot of these habits kind of innately in me, but I did go through a boot camp with Springboard, who's the sponsor of today's video. Shout out to them. That boot camp helped me further develop these habits into skills and ultimately kickstart my job search and my career as a designer. So I always love to tell you guys, when is the next UX UI boot camp start? The next start date is April 8th is the start. The deadline to be in that course, that cohort by April 8th is April 3rd. So remember those two dates, they're on the screen. And if you miss it, you're just gonna have to wait a whole other month to get into the next cohort. And guys, now is the time to capitalize on it. You're not doing yourself any favors by waiting too long. So use the code STEPHANIEM to get $1,000 off that course, and don't let another month go by. Get into it now. Next habit. Ask good questions. Be curious, be inquisitive, because you're going to be needing to ask questions throughout your whole career. You know, it's so easy to be given a task like, hey, Stephanie, design this thing. We need it by next week. And I could just be like, okay. And then I go to my computer, figure it out. It's just, don't do that. Don't do that, because you can come up with a solution, but is it going to be the right solution? And to ensure that you're at least giving yourself a chance in finding out the right solution is that you want to make sure you're asking questions. Why are we doing this? If they were to have this solution, what's their next step? Why are they asking for this feature? Is there something else deeper behind their initial problem? These are the kinds of things that are really going to help you kind of parse through some of the noise, because it's easy to get a request and be like, okay, this is a solution, done. But is it going to be the right solution? And then you're going to have to do this whole process again and again. So if you feel like you're kind of an inquisitive person, then this might come pretty easy to you. As a designer, it's on you to have a deeper understanding of the problem, understand your users' motivations, pain points, and needs, just to make sure that you're creating the right solution for it. So if you find yourself asking questions, this could be a good sign for you. I'm just going to call this one maintaining perspective. This can be a lot of things, but it's really about cultivating a habit of maintaining perspective in the face of criticism or setbacks. You know, design is subjective. We all know that. So you have to be open to feedback and understand that it's not a reflection of you and your worth as a designer, but rather a means to an end to improve the user experience. So I like to say maintaining perspective, it could be just like having a thicker skin. And not that I even feel like I feel like I have a good thickness of skin, I would say. I am putting myself on the internet, so you kind of have to, but just the perspective of it, of like, they're not, you know, criticizing me, Stephanie, as a person. It's more about like, how can we kind of take this apart and make it better? You have to keep that in mind. You know, a good thing is to like reflect on past projects and design choices that you made that maybe did not go well, did not go to plan, and kind of understand on like, where could I have improved on that thing? Kind of be ahead of the criticism if you can, you know, and think of it as like, not so much as a negative as a detractor, but more of, think of it with more of a growth mindset of, next time I know I can improve this thing. So perspective is everything. Now that we explored some habits of a designer, check out this video here where I go over what it's like in my life as a UX designer and see how I put these habits to use.